In 1974, during a Las Vegas show, Elvis Presley did something so unexpected that it left his fans and even his own band in total disbelief. This wasn't just another one of his legendary performances, it was a night unlike any other. Tensions were running high, and as the spotlight shone on the king, what happened next would stun everyone in the room. This one moment gave audiences a glimpse of a side of Elvis rarely seen, a side that few could have ever imagined. Was it frustration, pressure, or something much deeper? You won't believe what unfolded on that stage, and by the end of this story, you'll never look at Elvis the same way again. Stay tuned, because this is the moment that changed everything. Number 6. Setting the scene. In 1974, Elvis Presley was still reigning as the king of rock and roll, but beneath the surface, things were beginning to change. His Las Vegas residency, which had begun in 1969, was both a triumph and a burden. Night after night, he packed the showroom at the Las Vegas Hilton, delivering performances that solidified his status as a musical icon. But by the mid-70s, the pressures of constantly being in the spotlight were starting to take their toll. Behind the glitz and glamour, Elvis was grappling with health problems. His physical condition was deteriorating, and the effects of prescription medications were becoming harder to hide. While his fans saw the same magnetic performer on stage, those closest to him noticed a man weighed down by exhaustion, battling internal struggles that few outside his inner circle understood. Elvis had always been known for his flawless stage presence. Even during his hardest times, he could command the stage with a level of professionalism that kept his fans coming back for more. But something about this particular night in 1974 felt different. From the moment the show began, there was an undercurrent of tension. Elvis seemed distracted, less engaged than usual. The polished performer who typically flashed his charming smile and seemed to glide through every note appeared to be wrestling with something deeper. The band could sense it too. Something wasn't right. Although the audience likely chalked it up to a regular performance, those familiar with Elvis's demeanor could feel the shift. It was as though the perfect facade he had maintained for so long was beginning to crack. As the performance went on, the tension only seemed to rise. The band struggled to find its rhythm, and Elvis's frustration became more visible with each passing minute. The atmosphere in the room shifted. The energy was off-kilter, creating a growing sense of unease among those on stage. Elvis, who usually took these challenges in stride, was beginning to unravel. The mounting pressures of the music, not meeting his standards, combined with his internal struggles, pushed him toward an unexpected breaking point. Then, without warning, he did something that no one saw coming, an outburst that would leave the crowd stunned and his band members speechless. But what exactly did Elvis do, and how did the audience and those closest to him react? Stay with us, because the story is about to take a turn that no one could have predicted. Number 5. The incident unfolds. As the tension built on that fateful night in 1974, Elvis's frustration was palpable. He had been pushing through the performance, but something about the sound wasn't right, and it showed in his expression. The band played on, unaware of just how close things were to boiling over. Then, in the middle of a song, it happened. Elvis, visibly irritated, reached for his guitar, his instrument of choice, a symbol of his iconic rock and roll persona, and in one swift motion, he ripped it from his body and hurled it off the stage. The guitar crashed into the wings, disappearing from sight, as gasps rippled through the audience. This wasn't just a slip or a minor mistake. It was a clear, deliberate act of anger that no one, not even his closest band members, had seen coming. For a split second, the entire room seemed to freeze in disbelief, stunned by what they had just witnessed. The audience, which had come expecting another night of classic Elvis magic, was left in shock. Some fans looked around, bewildered, unsure of how to react. Others sat frozen in their seats, eyes wide as they tried to process the moment. Could it really be happening? This was Elvis Presley, always in control, always composed. But here he was, visibly shaken and throwing his guitar in a burst of anger. His bandmates, equally shocked, exchanged glances, unsure of what to do next. They had performed with Elvis countless times, but they had never seen him like this. What was supposed to be a routine night had suddenly turned into something much more unpredictable, and the tension in the room was thick. Kathy Westmoreland, one of Elvis's backing vocalists, later recalled, "We didn't know how to react. It wasn't just about the music. Something bigger was happening, and we all felt it." Guitarist James Burton, a close member of Elvis's band, would later reflect on that moment as well. "I'd never seen him like that before," Burton said. "He was always so professional, always commanding the stage with a smile. But that night, something was different. You could feel his frustration in the air." The incident was not just shocking for the audience, but deeply unsettling for those closest to Elvis. Kathy Westmoreland echoed Burton's sentiments, noting that Elvis's outburst seemed to be the result of something far more profound than just a bad performance. "He had been pushing himself so hard for years," she said. "When he threw that guitar, it felt like he was trying to throw away all the weight he'd been carrying, all the frustration and pain." It was a rare glimpse into the emotional toll that life in the spotlight had taken on the king, and for those who knew him well, it was a moment they would never forget. Number 4. Exploring the bigger picture. To truly understand what led to Elvis Presley's dramatic outburst that night in Las Vegas, it's important to look beyond the stage. By 1974, Elvis was no longer the carefree young rock and roll sensation that had first burst onto the scene. Years of relentless touring, demanding performances, and constant public scrutiny had begun to take their toll. His health was deteriorating rapidly. He had gained weight, his energy was dwindling, and he was increasingly dependent on prescription medications to keep going. This physical decline was compounded by emotional and personal struggles that were weighing heavily on him. Despite the smiles he flashed to the audience behind the scenes, Elvis was battling exhaustion and stress. He felt the enormous pressure to maintain his title as the King of Rock and Roll, even as his body and spirit were telling him to slow down. The immense pressure of living up to the public's expectations only added to Elvis's personal turmoil. For years, he had been carrying the weight of being an icon, a legend whose every move was scrutinized and celebrated in equal measure. Behind the glamour of fame, though, Elvis felt increasingly isolated. The people closest to him, including his band and entourage, began to notice the cracks in his seemingly impenetrable armor. He was no longer the vibrant man they once knew, and it was clear that something was wrong. The constant need to perform, to be Elvis Presley in the eyes of the world, had pushed him to the brink. It wasn't just about the music or the show anymore. There was a deep internal battle being fought, one that would sometimes spill out in unexpected ways, like that night on stage. One of the few people who truly understood the depth of Elvis's struggles was his spiritual advisor, Larry Geller. Geller, who had known Elvis for years, often served as a confidant, someone Elvis could talk to when the pressures of his fame became too much to bear. Geller later shared his perspective on the incident, believing that the act of throwing his guitar symbolized something much larger. Elvis was deeply spiritual, but he also felt trapped by his public image, Geller explained. That night, I believe he reached a breaking point. The frustration he unleashed wasn't just about a bad performance. It was the result of years of internal conflict. He was a man torn between the demands of his career and his own need for peace. That guitar throw, to me, was Elvis's way of trying to let go of all the pain and frustration he had been carrying inside. For Elvis, that moment was not just an outburst. It was a cry for help, one that reflected the overwhelming pressure of being a legend in a world that never let him rest. Number 3. The turning point Elvis Presley's inner circle, his band members, bodyguards, and close friends, had witnessed his rise to fame, But by 1974, they were also seeing a different side of him, one that concerned them deeply. For years, Elvis had been the epitome of confidence and charm, someone who could light up a room with his presence. But behind the scenes, those closest to him were beginning to notice a growing darkness. His longtime bodyguard, Sonny West, often spoke about the immense pressure Elvis was under and the toll it was taking on him. He was dealing with so much, West recalled. Everyone saw the superstar, but we saw the man who was tired, who was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. The expectations were sky high, and he felt like he couldn't live up to them anymore. The flashy jumpsuits, the sold-out shows, the adoring fans, it all came at a price. And for those in his inner circle, the cracks in Elvis's seemingly invincible exterior were becoming more and more apparent with each passing day. Sonny West, along with others in the Memphis Mafia, had been with Elvis through the highs and lows. But as the pressure mounted, they could see the toll it was taking on their friend. West described the subtle but telling changes in Elvis's behavior, his increasing reliance on medication to keep going, his irritability, and the moments of vulnerability that surfaced more often as the years went on. He wasn't the same Elvis we'd known, West said. There were days when he was just so exhausted, mentally and physically, that it was hard to recognize the guy who once took over the world with a single performance. That fateful night in Las Vegas, when Elvis threw his guitar in frustration, was a culmination of the years of stress, pressure, and inner conflict he had been quietly grappling with. For his inner circle, it was a moment that confirmed their deepest fears. Elvis was struggling, and it was only getting harder for him to hide it. For the fans in the audience that night, the incident revealed a more human side of Elvis, one that they had rarely, if ever, seen before. One fan who attended the concert later recalled the shock of witnessing such a raw, emotional outburst from someone who was usually so composed. We'd come to see the king, the performer who never missed a beat, but what we saw was the man behind the music, the fan shared. It was like, for the first time, we were seeing Elvis as a person, not just a superstar. You could feel his frustration, his pain, and in a strange way, it made us love him even more because it reminded us that he was human, just like the rest of us. This moment, while unsettling, brought Elvis closer to his fans in a way no polished performance ever could. It was a rare glimpse behind the curtain, showing that even the most iconic figures have their breaking points. Number 2. The aftermath. After the shocking moment when Elvis hurled his guitar off stage, there was a tense silence that hung in the air. The audience, stunned by the outburst, watched with bated breath, unsure of how the rest of the night would unfold. But in true Elvis fashion, he quickly regained his composure, almost as if nothing had happened. He continued with the performance, pushing through the set with the professionalism that had come to define him over the years. There were no apologies or explanations. Elvis simply moved on. The audience, still processing what they had just witnessed, followed his lead, returning their focus to the music. Some fans speculated that maybe it was just a fleeting moment of frustration, while others believed it revealed something deeper. But Elvis didn't linger on it. He finished the show as if it were just another night in Las Vegas. The show went on, but the atmosphere had undeniably shifted. In the days that followed, the incident became the talk of fans and those who had worked closely with him. Rumors swirled about what had really caused Elvis to snap. Was it frustration with the band, or had the pressures of his declining health and relentless schedule finally caught up with him? Despite all the speculation, Elvis never publicly acknowledged the event. He offered no interviews, no statements to explain his behavior. His silence left the moment open to interpretation, fueling even more curiosity and conversation. Those who knew him best, his band, friends, and spiritual advisor, believed it was more than just an off night. Yet, without any word from Elvis himself, the true reasons behind that guitar-throwing incident remained shrouded in mystery. To this day, it remains one of those unforgettable moments in his career that fans still wonder about, a testament to the complex man behind the legend. Number 1. The deeper meaning. The guitar-throwing incident in 1974 has since become a powerful symbol of Elvis Presley's struggles during the later stages of his career. By this time, Elvis was battling not only physical decline, but also the immense psychological and emotional pressures that came with maintaining his status as a global icon. His health was deteriorating, worsened by a growing dependence on prescription medications, and the demands of performing nearly every night left him exhausted. This moment on stage, where the polished, charismatic performer lost control, became emblematic of a deeper turmoil brewing beneath the surface. It was as though the image of the king had begun to crack, exposing the vulnerable man behind the legendary persona. In that instant, the public caught a rare glimpse of the immense burden Elvis carried, one that no amount of fame, money, or adoration could lighten. The 1974 outburst offers a rare and poignant reflection of Elvis's humanity. Despite being revered as a larger-than-life figure, this moment reminded the world that even someone as iconic as Elvis Presley had his limits. For decades, he had been the epitome of confidence and control, commanding the stage with an effortless charm that made him the king of rock and roll. But here, in this fleeting act of frustration, Elvis revealed that he too was susceptible to the pressures of life, just like anyone else. This incident was not just a break in his performance, but a break in the illusion of perfection that surrounded him. It showed that behind the dazzling lights and roaring crowds, there was a man struggling with his own battles, a man who, in that moment, reached a breaking point in front of his adoring fans. As we look back on this pivotal moment in Elvis's career, it's impossible not to wonder what deeper issues may have been at play. Was it simply frustration with the band's performance, or was this outburst a manifestation of years of personal and professional struggles? We may never know the full extent of what led to this dramatic event, but it has left an indelible mark on how we view Elvis's later years. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Do you think this moment was a sign of something more profound going on in Elvis's life? Was it an isolated incident, or a window into the deeper issues he was facing? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, because this story of the king is far from finished, and your perspective is part of what keeps his legacy alive. We want to hear what you think. Do you believe this moment in 1974 was a sign of something much deeper going on in Elvis's life? Or was it just a one-time outburst of frustration? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. What do you think really pushed the king to his breaking point on stage that night? Let's keep the conversation going. Your perspective could shed new light on this unforgettable moment in Elvis's career.